So what I'm doing here is I'm just testing the steering box, and well, I've got the low pressure side and the high pressure side, and this steering box is upside down to what it would be on the vehicle, because that's the steering arm drop link, which is kind of about that height on the vehicle. So that seal, well sorry, the MOT failure was this. In fact, I'll just get a hammer and see if that moves. And this should move with a hammer. So that's the reason. So the ball joint's not gone, there's no play in the ball joint, but the boot's gone. So I could just take the circlip off there, off the top of here, bash the ball joint out and put a new ball joint in. However, we noticed that the steering box was leaking. It's leaking out of, I'll get a screwdriver, it was leaking out of this seal here. You can see this seal's blown. Now this is upside down of course, because that'll be down there. So that seal's blown, so it's caused oil all over this area here, which has preserved it of course, but it's now it's been run at some point without any steering fluid in, because if I put that notch in there, let's see if I can get this one in here. So that's a steering centre. That notch equals that hole. There's a little bolt you can fit in there. That means the steering's centralised. And if I push this way and that way, there should be no play. So this one shouldn't move, and it doesn't. So there's no play. So it's been set up right. And then when you get to the edge of, and oil is going to drip out here now, but if I go to the edge, there should be a tiny bit of play, and there's a tiny bit of play. I'll move to the other lock. This is a lock on the steering. Ow! Move to the other lock, and there should be a tiny bit of play, and there is. You can just see that play there moving in the steering. I'm going to go back to centre. Back to centre. Take it out. There should be no play, and there isn't any play there. There's no movement there at all. So the box has been set up right. However, it's been run with no fluid in, and I know that because if I turn it, I'm getting a notch. So a bearing here, or I can't remember whether it's there or there. One of the bearings is notchy, which presumably is either the bearing at the bottom in this part here in the worm, which I think is there, or it's the bearing in that race there. No, that's the seal race, so it's there. The bearing's gone on the steering box, so I've got to renew the bearing and that seal, and I might as well renew that seal as well. It means I've got to take both shafts out of this steering box to do it. Then I've got to set it up with the right end float, which is on there. So I've got to set it up with no end float there. When it's on full lock, a tiny bit of end float or drag, a tiny bit of end float on there, and that's what gives you a little bit of play in defender steering wheels when they're on full lock. Is that little tiny bit of play, and that's on purpose because it's a worm wheel, so it moves. It needs a tiny bit of play because there's an arc. If I'll put it in front of the camera there, if I can see it, there's an arc as you move the steering out and the steering on the left-hand lock. But in the dead centre, there should be no play at all. On the full lock right, there should be a little bit of play, and on the full lock left, there should be a little bit of play as well. So now we know we've got to get a rebuild kit and rebuild our steering box from Adwest. This is an Adwest 4-bolt steering box. It's called a 4-bolt because when it's the other way up, you can see these 4 bolts here, just here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's called a 4-bolt. And I've got to set the play up. I think I've got end float to set up on that. Someone will correct me on this, I know they will. End float on this. I've got to set up end float on that adjuster there, and then I've got to set up the play on this one on the arm there when I rebuild it. So I haven't got a rebuild kit. I haven't got a socket. I don't know what size that top socket is. This one here, I think it's about 1.25 inch socket. So I have to get 1.25 inch socket and then start the rebuild. I've got the drop arm, so I need 1.25 inch socket. I think it's 1.25 inch, and 2 seals and a couple of bearings. That's us on the steering box.